I've been part of the Geometry Dash community for 5 years now, and although I don't really play the game nearly as much anymore, it's still safe to say that Geometry Dash has been a pretty big part of my life. Now, obviously over all that time, I've come across a lot of things that I like, but also dislike about the game. And while I could ramble on and on about everything I disagree with, that would just be complaining and not proper criticism. Besides, I already did that. This time, instead of crying about what we don't have, I've come up with 50 fairly simple and hopefully easy to program ideas for the game, and the potential ways that they could be implemented. These ideas range from highly requested editor features to very tiny shortcuts like a full screen hotkey. I attempted to put together little fan-made clips and screenshots for each idea, but don't expect too much detail because I had to make, well, 50 of them. Also, do I want 2.2 to be delayed for these things? No. Do I expect any of them to be added? Probably not, but would they be nice to have in the game at some point? Absolutely. And hey, a man can dream. So without further ado, let's go through 50 simple things that I'd love to see in Geometry Dash in no particular order. I really want the ability to right-click in the editor. It's such an accessible button, and for some reason it just serves no purpose in GD. It would be super helpful if you could right-click an object to open up the edit interface, or maybe even shift right-click to edit the group. And on the topic of mouse buttons, what about the middle one? You can middle click on an object to choose it in the build tab, or drag the button to pan the screen around. As for the scroll wheel, well, I think using it to zoom in and out would make way more sense than scrolling the screen up and down. An option to play a random level with your selected search filters. I programmed this feature into gdbrowser.com a while back, but it's usually broken because instead of the game telling you how many levels there are, it just says 9999. Organize the options menu a little bit. It's very easy to get lost while looking for a specific setting, so sorting them into categories like gameplay or graphics would help a lot. Add an area where you could play levels from Geometry Dash Meltdown, Sub-Zero, and World. These songs are actually already in the GD game files, so it's completely doable. While it makes the most sense to press a button on the menu to access the levels, I think it would be a lot cooler if you scattered them across secret areas, kind of like how you access the challenge. Add some hotkeys to quickly navigate the menu. Call me lazy if you want, but it would be so nice to instantly jump to the search page with Shift F, or access your saved levels with Shift S. Geometry Dash is mainly a one-button game, so why not add some more buttons to jump with? Keys like Z or W would provide a nice alternative for left-handed people, and the shift keys would be perfect for two-player levels. And while we're at it, all those buttons should work in the editor as well. Seriously, why doesn't the up key work? Could we increase a couple of the character limits? The 20 character limit on the text object is just ridiculous, and longer level descriptions would also be quite handy. Remove the character filter on level titles. I really don't get why punctuation marks are strictly forbidden. Why is there no hotkey for full screen? Almost every game lets you switch between full screen and windowed using F11 or Alt-Enter, and I don't see why GD can't do the same. This one's a bit of a stretch, but how about some accessibility options for practice mode? You could adjust the speed of the gameplay, or even turn on no-clip if you feel like it, but to keep things fair, you'd still not be allowed to hear the original song. The snap button in the editor is almost barely used, so why not replace it with something like scale? Then just add a snap to grid button to the edit tab. Okay, hear me out. Smart start positions that auto-determine your form and camera position based on the most recent portals. You can enable it using a checkbox. If a start position takes more than a second or two to load in the editor, it should automatically pause the preview to maintain sync and avoid a massive lag spike. Better guideline editing. It would be so cool if you could enter a song's BPM and have it auto-set the guidelines for you. Auto-saving. Or maybe just backup files, because, yeah. It would also be funny if there was a stopwatch that showed you the time since you last saved. Make the undo button detect changes to object properties like the color or group. This one is probably going to be tough to implement, but I figured I'd throw it out there anyways. If a level's length is XL, automatically add a decimal place to the percentage. It's nothing crazy, but it'd be nice. Make the editor reset your percentage every time the level changes, kind of like how it becomes unverified. Because, well, the level changed. Steam Cloud support, so you can pick up exactly where you left off on another device. You'd still have to rely on the account system for mobile though. You know what, just totally overhaul the comments. I'm talking higher character limit, emojis, or maybe even basic markdown like bold or italics. And what about replying to comments? You could choose if anyone could reply or just the author. And just like on YouTube, the creator should also be able to pin or heart their favorite comments. Your total attempt count should be separated into normal and practice mode, because practice just causes your attempt count to explode. When you're paused, pressing the escape key should unpause the level instead of returning you to the menu. It just makes more sense that way. If you copy your own level, it should not have a copy mark next to it. Why not show a few more things on user profiles? You could optionally allow people to see your favorited levels, followed creators, mutual friends, and so on. Maybe add some very basic sorting options when viewing a player's levels. Alright, let's talk about triggers a little bit. So, how about a loop option for spawn triggers that runs the trigger every X seconds? I know you can already make loops using a simple setup, but this would be way more convenient. How about a foreground option for pulse triggers which flashes the whole screen? It sounds like a really bad idea at first, but it could actually be used really well in certain situations. And the foreground option would go quite well with an opacity option. Color channels already have an opacity slider, so I don't understand why pulse triggers can't temporarily change it. Make touch triggers work better with 2-player mode. The button you press could determine which group gets activated. More operations for the pickup trigger. Maybe you want to multiply the current number by 2, or set the value to exactly 10. An else option for instant count triggers. For example, if the number is greater than 5, activate group 10. Otherwise, activate group 11. A player option for the collision trigger, because why put a collision box on top of the player when it already has its own hitbox? Also, more shapes for collision blocks would be cool, like a circle or a triangle. This might just be because I make 1.0 styled levels, but could we please have the old half slab back? This one just isn't the same. More blending modes for colors. The current blending system just adds the RGB values of both colors, but there's all sorts of other ways to do it. Subtraction, multiplication, and whatever these ones do. An option to set the opacity of an entire editor layer. No alpha trigger needed. An option to customize the 12 buttons on the right of the editor. A lot of them could be accessed with hotkeys, and I'd love to replace the ones I never use with things like Build Helper or Select All. Also, why not move Edit Special into the Edit tab? Speaking of Edit Special, how about more uses for it? You could disable particles on certain objects, change the default animation for monsters, or maybe even modify the strength of pulsing objects. Make, or at least attempt to make, the paste button snap objects to the grid. A button or hotkey that temporarily hides the editor interface. It would be nice for viewing the level, or maybe just taking a screenshot. A preview window for HSV along with the option to type a specific number. Seriously, why don't we have this? Instead of a simple checkbox to disable shaking, how about a slider that adjusts the strength of screen shakes? For example, you would still have shaking enabled, but it would be at half the strength. Apparently 2.2 is going to add a replay system that records your inputs and plays them back. So maybe in the editor there could be a replay button next to the playtest one. It would automatically play back your most recent attempt, so you don't have to worry about timing. 2-factor authentication. Because of how the GD servers work, this would require the login system to be completely remade, but still, 2-factor authentication. And finally, the option to save levels as files and send them to your friends. I cannot express how useful this would be for collabs. Heck, you could even use custom songs that are on Newgrounds, but the level wouldn't actually be uploadable. Whew, and there you have it. 50 small things that would be really nice to have in Geometry Dash, but probably not worth delaying 2.2 for. Hopefully you found some of these ideas interesting, and if we're lucky, we might even have a chance at seeing 1 or 2 of them in a future update. Special thanks to the handful of people who looked over and helped build on my ideas, and yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Congratulations on having a good enough attention span to sit through the whole video. If you have any more ideas or feedback, let me know in the comments below. Special thanks to all my channel members for existing, and also the cool artist on screen for quenching my eternal thirst for fan art. Be sure to subscribe so that you can get notified next century when I wake from my slumber and upload a new video. But in the meantime, later nerds.